So to get us started here, I'd like to introduce our moderator for our second panel session of Small Business Perspectives. And so this will be moderated by Dr. Diane Rollman. Dr. Rollman's an associate professor in the Department of Occupational and Environmental Health at the University of Iowa. She received her PhD in experimental psychology from Bowling Green State University in Ohio. Dr. Rollman is the director of the Healthier Workforce Center of the Midwest. Her research focuses on identifying and preventing occupational and environmental illness and injury, and I can attest that she's an excellent pizza party hostess. So, thanks.
Thanks, Tom. We're going to have an informal conversation here, and I'm really excited because we have 3 different employers here who are going to talk to us and answer some of the questions we've come together about what their workplace looks like and what are their issues there. So I'm going to start on the end, and we have Josh Kryl. And Josh is the contract superintendent for Horizon Glass. It's a construction company that has less than 85 employees. And he understands that although some businesses are small in size, they can make a big difference in the lives of their employees. Next to Josh is Kyle. Kyle Littleman is the COO of Avid for Adventures, which is an adventure education company that empowers kids to choose an active outdoor lifestyle. During his tenure, Avid 4 has grown from a summer day camp in Boulder, Colorado, to an organization that serves over 25,000 children and 500 staff in over 20 locations, both in Colorado and California. Prior to working for Avid 4, he worked as a special education teacher, outward bound instructor, ski instructor, and bike guide. He's got a lot of hobbies, I think. His professional interests include developing new organizational leaders, nurturing culture during growth, and inspiring servant leadership across the organization. And then our last panelist is Tom Kuhil. And Tom is trained and is recognized internationally as a chef with a passion for authentic French cooking. He began his love affair with a restaurant in Kentucky that has a long French name I'm not going to pronounce. He also is trained under master chefs at various restaurants, also with long French names, in France, Illinois, and Los Angeles. And in 1992, he opened the highly acclaimed restaurant called
Ciboulette,
which was ranked in the top 10 by Condé Nast and in the top 25 nationwide by Esquire magazine. So we've got some pretty cool people up here. And I just want to start by asking our panelists, give us a brief orientation. Tell us about your workplace and your workforce so we can kind of set the stage for the conversation.
Well, we're a restaurant, so our workforce is, there's plenty of areas for work safety for us to look at. We have alcohol everywhere, which is a safety issue because we don't want the employees drinking it. And we have to also have safety for the guests coming in so they're not drinking too much of it. We have knives everywhere, ovens, hot boiling water. So it sounds scary, but it's really not that scary. And we have to train and we have to watch and really. There's a lot of safety and environmental things that the government requires from us, but it's not enough to just have that. We have to really watch and train and put people in the right positions so they're not using a knife if they've never used a knife before without a cut glove, or they're using the machinery right, or they're not drinking all of our alcohol. So we have a lot of, and we spill water on there's spills all the time on the floor. So it's a constant process. So the health, safety, and the environment in the restaurant has to be monitored all the time. And it can be challenging, but we have systems and we have almost like safety. Our management team has been safety trained. We do HACCP. We do a bunch of different types of safety programs to keep training. So it's a challenging environment, but it's, once you get used to it and you know what to look for, we don't seem to have too many problems, cut finger here or there, but nothing, we've never had any major problems. So that's kind of what we do.
So our workforce is young, is fun, and is very highly distributed, with 20 day camps and 2 overnight camps from Boulder down to Colorado Springs, and then all around San Francisco from Mill Valley down to Silicon Valley. We are just completely distributed. So in the summertime, our workforce goes from 15 who oversees the operation during the year, to about 600 this year, many of which, like I said, are in their younger 20s and their responsibility is to introduce kids to outdoor adventure. So they take kids rock climbing, paddle boarding, mountain biking, hiking. The most dangerous thing we do, much to the perceived risk of our parents, is transporting children from a home location 15 to 30 minutes away to a recreation location. That's what we get the least questions about, but it's kind of what keeps us up at night, is the potential for a vehicle accident.
Does this work? Okay. So we do glass in tall buildings, small buildings. We have 18-year-old kids. We have 65-year-old people doing glass. So we have a wide range and experience. And the number one goal that we have at Horizon Glass is to create an environment where everybody has a voice and can talk about safety and not be afraid to bring something up. So that's really at the core of what we do there. And we have the benefit of belonging to a union where we have a lot of training that's provided to them. So that helps out a lot, and looking forward to seeing what we come up with here.
Sounds great. So you can see that we've got a lot of diversity in the areas of work, but also in the workplaces as well. So we know that over time that the nature of work has changed significantly. If we look over the past couple of decades, there's been a lot of changes. And many would argue that there are fewer incentives for companies to care for their workers. So I'd like you to explain, why does your company care about the value workplace health and safety? You want to start?
Sure. So we have a great owner, and I believe it starts with that. If you have an owner that believes in safety, and what we've been able to accomplish in the last 3 years is a lot of our leadership has risen up through the ranks, and so they come from a place where they already value their safety and their coworkers. So it's been a great thing to see, come to light. And our owner does not give a safety budget. So when we propose something, we get to pretty much do it, and that's changed the culture. Do we like to use the word culture or climate?
We'll go with either.
So I like to use culture because I believe that gets to the heart of what you believe in. And if your heart's in the right place, then the outcome will be good.
I mean, I can add a little bit, similar to what you're saying. I started as a seasonal field staff employee 10 years ago when it was 4 employees with a very compassionate owner. And from the moment I started, the kind of vibe around the company was, treat everybody the way that you would want the most precious person in your life to be treated. I have 2 children. I look at every camper as those could be my children in that group rock climbing. The litmus test for hiring a staff is, would I trust that staff with my child? When a customer's unhappy, it's, what if that unhappy customer was my wife? And if you have that mentality through all of the interactions that you have throughout your company, then you create, again, this spirit of generosity that is contagious, and it affects the safety of your staff, it affects the happiness of your kids in our case, and it affects the quality of the service we provide, which is inspiring kids.
In the restaurant, it's really important for us for everybody not to be cutting themselves and getting injured, because then we won't have anybody to cook the food in the back of the house part. So we have to be constantly watching out, and the whole management team is constantly watching out for. Generally, we have well-trained cooks, but we will bring apprentices in that are very young or still going to school, and they are under the spotlight for the first few days to see if they really know how to use a knife, if they're getting ready to cut their finger off. You can see in a few minutes. So we watch all those things. The alcohol piece of it in our business is really can be dangerous, because a lot of the bartenders, if you're not watching, they might be drinking on the job. They drink, they can get sloppy and hurt somebody with the work environment of being drunk. So we have to be very vigilant on the safety piece to keep the staff running so we can produce the food and the service and everything we do. The other thing we do for safety is we believe, especially with the management team who's on salary, in giving them a good work-life balance, because if they're overworked and they're tired, or even if the hourly staff's overworked or tired, they're going to be more likely to get injured. So we've been lucky for 6.5 years at Coo Hills here that we've had very few, we've never had anything major, but like I said, a couple bruises, a couple cuts, and a couple people who drank too much that we had to deal with. But it's really important to keep the staff there. It's important for them, but to work and make money, and it's important for us to have the staff to produce the food and the service that we do.
So how do you think we create more meaningful work for employees? So as the organization of work changes, and we're getting more in the informal economy, I think about it, restaurant workers, we talked about this, how long do they stay in that position? And certainly, Kyle, you've got seasonal workers, which are coming and going. So when we think about meaningful work for employees, what does that mean to you? And how is this changing the employer-employee relationship? Is that impacting your business or your area? And how do we ensure that employees feel connected to the product or service they provide? And interested in the company and in the organization as the work changes. Go ahead.
There's a lot of questions there. It's Simon Sinek that so adequately said in his TED Talk, it starts with why. And if you have a strong why and you're able to communicate that why, even to seasonal staff, then that's the power of, believing in the mission of your business. And more so, we work with a lot of millennials, and people have all sorts of characterizations to make about the millennials, but really, they need the same thing that all of us need. I mean, they just want to feel valued, and they want to feel like they're working for an organization that is important in the world. And if you include all of your employees, even our 6-week, 10-week employees, in really important things. Like last year, we were setting our chart for a new 10-year vision, and that was an inclusive process that not only included our year-round staff and our parents, but our vendors and our seasonal staff. And when you write your core values, you really live and die by the core values. You're talking about them from the moment you meet someone in an interview through performance evaluations, weekly awards, if you have to do terminations. And if you really can instill not only belief in the vision, but also living by the core values, then this changing workforce is a really loyal workforce and one that's committed to achieving the vision, even if they're not around to see it 10 years down the road.
That was well put. I think that might relate to a later question. Creating the environment where everybody owns their job, where there's the buy-in. How do you do that? How do you get people to own their job and make it theirs? You get their input, right? You ask them what they think about things, so everybody has a voice. One of the things I ask people that want to come work for us is, how are you going to make us better? And I don't say that because I want the company to be better and make more money. I say it because what is your attitude about coming to work? Are you coming to work to get paid? Or are you coming to benefit the company and improve it? And if you have the right attitude, you'll come to work every day to make it a better place. And they know that up front, that's one of the things that we're looking for, is people that want to make it a better place. So wanted to add that.
We are kind of fortunate because we have basically two sides of a restaurant. You have the kitchen and then you have the front of the house. So from the kitchen's perspective, we do very creative menus, and we make everything in-house. We make everything from the bread to the ice cream. Everything we make is from scratch. So we get a lot of culinary students, either students that are graduates of the culinary schools, or not even graduates, people that just want to do an apprenticeship and learn, young cooks that want to learn how to cook. And it benefits them in their career because they can grow and become executive chefs and make all kinds of money if they really learn how to cook authentic, great, from scratch. So from that perspective, we're lucky because they're able to learn, and we get a lot of really hungry young people that want to learn. In the front of the house, it's a little different. They're working for gratuities. So the servers, if you have bad service, aren't going to make very much money. So it's almost financially, the incentive is to have great service. And we watch them and we help them through that. So we have we have dual carrots going on here. So in the kitchen, it's more, they want to learn how to cook great food and they want to move on eventually. And in the front of the house, it's absolutely financially an incentive for them because they have to have really great service or they're not going to get good gratuity.
I think I've got this. So how does this impact retention? Do you think it's important in hiring people to help you recruit people, but also in keeping people employed?
It truly plays into if folks work for you and believe in what they're doing, that they're making a contribution, they want to stay there. It's really that simple.
Yeah, I mean, I would just add, we don't lose full-time staff from the moment, our stated goal is this will be the best job you could ever have. Granted, if you want to change industry and go from adventure education to, a lawyer, then we can't provide that for you. But we have had such little turnover because just of the authentic workplace that we create. Seasonally, of course, people move on. People have to get year-round jobs, and we can't offer full-time jobs to 600 seasonal staff. But again, this population of people, they want to do something they love in an environment that is supportive. And these guys get to, and women, of course, mainly women, get to go out all day and paddle with kids and climb and hike. And you really can't create a better work environment than that.
With us, we have what I like to call positive transition. So in the kitchen, cooks will stay a year to 2 years because they'll learn, and they shouldn't stay longer than that because they'll learn all they can from me, and they'll say, I want to move on, and where should I go? And then I'll call one of the chefs that makes maybe different style of food than I do, but same quality, and I'll send them to work there. So we're kind of, it's almost like this conveyor belt of all of us trading, trained chefs or trained cooks. In the front of the house, they tend to stay a little bit longer because they're making really good money. But a lot of them, there's not very many professional waiters anymore. But we are able to keep good ones for 2-3 years, and then they'll either graduate college and then they'll go on to a nursing career or something like that. But that's fine too, just as long as it's positive change. If you're not losing people for all the wrong reasons. So, we're kind of transient, but it's positive transient.
So do you think organization of work changes based on whether you're a small enterprise versus a large enterprise?
I mean, absolutely it changes. Resources change. People become more siloed and specialized. When Avid started, I had the pleasure of hiring the staff and marketing the programs and being camp director and driving the vans and making the lunches and stuff. And that certainly doesn't happen anymore. We have like departments and technology and money to do things with, to outsource. So certainly things have changed. We've grown 40%, year over year for the past decade. So things have to change to keep up with our mission to inspire kids. But fundamentally what doesn't change is the relationships between people. So yeah, now we have departments, but when it was just Dave and I, the way we talk to each other is the same genuine, caring, compassionate way that the staffing manager talks to the marketing manager, which talks to the controller. So the core notion of the organization has remained the same even as we've multiplied.
The great thing about small business is you have the human element. I've promoted three recent superintendents, and the first thing that I told them all is we have a business to run here, but your first line of thinking needs to be the human element. and what are people going through. And just because somebody does poorly one day, you don't discipline based on that. You get to know the person, and it's very important that you do that, or people realize that you don't care about them. So if they know you care about them, and in a large business, I don't know if you get to do that. I've never worked in a large business, so I don't know how well that gets to happen in a large business, but it's very important, and you get to do that in a small business. You get to have the human element. So.
Yeah, it's definitely different with large business. I've done some consulting work and for some large companies, and one of them was they wanted me to redo the food for the Grammys out at the Staples Center in LA. So there you're talking, like in an individual restaurant, you're talking about, you know, I can talk to every dishwasher and cook myself and work with them all day long. But with the Grammys, it's 25 chefs, so I got to manage 25 chefs to manage the other 150 employees in the kitchen to produce all this food for the club levels, the really nice food for all the celebrities and down in the dressing rooms and everything. So, and then all the big restaurants they had in there. So it was a big challenge, but it's a different way. It's totally different because you're involved in a lot in it, but you're more on the outside. You can't go talk to every single cook in every station that they're working. So it's definitely a lot different for when you have a bigger operation.
I have to say that you guys sound like three people I'd like to work for. So,
We're not making it up.
so if my day job doesn't work out, I may be calling y'all. So one of the things we've talked about a lot during this conference is safety and health needs of small employers, and trying to figure out, you know, how do we, in some sense, market the need for them or raise awareness that safety and health is an important factor. And sometimes we tend to focus on it increases productivity or it adds value. And I guess the next question really is, you know, what do you see the role that occupational safety and health plays in terms of addressing the quality of how work in your organization gets done?
I can start. I mean, again, it's paramount. You know, we're a triple bottom line company, so we say our three bottom lines are: number one, safety first; number two, stellar programs; number three, happy staff. So how it affects productivity is, you know, a lot of our staff don't come in with the skill set to teach all of our core sports. It's really up to us to train people to be able to take kids out, you know, rock climbing and paddleboarding, things that perhaps they haven't done before. So, you know, we're dealing with a lot of staff that kind of start a little bit wide-eyed, but once we train them and we get them comfortable and they could pass the skill set needed to be able to teach this stuff to young kids, then they're really happy. They just learned this skill that they could practice for the rest of their lives. We show them a diagram at staff training that, you know, happy staff leads to happy kids, leads to happy parents, which leads to happy directors, and then it just continues to work itself around. So, you know, without a staff feeling safe, having the skill set to run safe programs, that's the core of it all. That directly leads to us being able to deliver an incredible service to a lot of kids.
Our owner said that his most productive P&L were the years they had the least safety incidents, and he was already bought into this idea that safety can increase the quality of your work, because when your mindset is correct and you're putting safety first, it also creates a mindset of quality in your work, and that produces not doing work twice, which means you make more money. So it's pretty simple.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think, you know, what we do, I speak a lot from the kitchen side, but it's kind of the same in the front of the house, is if we don't have a safe environment, a clean environment, an organized environment for the staff, and we don't hold them accountable, each staff member, to keep it that way, it's hard for them to do their job because we do a lot of complex things in the kitchen, and they need space, they need time, and they can't be navigating around a mess or sloppiness or broken equipment or dangerous areas, or they won't get their work done. So for us, it's a necessity because to get the job done, they have to have an organized, kind of clean, safe area to work in.
So we've kind of touched on it a little bit, but maybe you could talk about when you hire someone new. What does the safety training that you provide look like? What are the topics you include, and how often is that repeated throughout their tenure in your company?
With Horizon Glass, it's an evolving thing. As we see a new need to train, we add it to the orientation, and we kind of rule by committee, even though we have a full-time safety representative. We take it very serious. We've even gone to the lengths of creating what we hire as industrial workers are truck drivers, and they deliver glass and aluminum to the field. The safety director in our company and myself and a few other people put together a program just to train those people in all the facets. So first of all, they get a 8-hour course in all of it condensed, and then they work with a mentor for the first 2 weeks. So that's how we start training people from the get-go. And every year we require 25 hours of continuing education that they keep up on their certifications, and it proves to be pretty effective. Just having those policies in place helps.
For us, from the moment someone's hired, they're basically welcomed into this community of educators. So, we're a pretty active group that's regularly, not just in the summer, out biking, climbing, stuff like that. So folks are, even before they start being employed, they are invited to practice their skills, to learn new skills. Once employment actually starts, of course, we have to put them through a pretty thorough 7-day training where we're not only teaching them outdoor skills, but we're really teaching them about the business and about how to run the business so that they can take ownership for everything that they do that helps grow the business. And then ongoing, again, probably a day doesn't go by that people aren't out recreating after work. So the kind of work hard, play hard notion, is what we do every day of the summer, so people have the opportunity. The most important thing, though, really is that if a staff isn't comfortable doing something, if they've gone through belay training and they still don't want to belay kids, if they've gone through driver training and they still don't feel comfortable driving a 15-passenger van in San Francisco, then they don't have to do that. We remain nimble enough that we can alter positions so that somebody doesn't have to do something until he or she is really confident doing it.
We have, whoever we hire has to shadow for, usually it's about close to a week. So they'll shadow one of our trainers, whether it's in the kitchen or the front of the house, and we will then all sit down and talk, about what their needs are. If we have a cook that's, well, it's hard to have a cook that can't use a knife very well, but if we have one that's a little slower with a knife or a little nervous, it's a new student just out of school, we'll put them in a position where, where they're not required to constantly use a knife, and we'll watch them, we'll give them a cut glove. I guess the question would be, why don't you always give them a cut glove? Because it's not the easiest thing to work with when you're cutting using a cut glove, but we'll use that. So we make evaluations, and they shadow, then we make evaluations, and they learn all the safety guidelines during the shadowing process. And then if we find where their weaknesses are, and then we make sure we put them in a place to where they can gradually work on those weaknesses, and they're not thrown into the really hard areas that they might not be successful at.
And what about some of the policies that you might have in place or programs? Could you talk a little bit about those and where they were developed? Did they come up as needed, or when you sat down and did your business plan, was it something you thought about?
I got one right now. We have a zero tolerance to drinking, because that's a big issue in the restaurant industry, because you literally are surrounded by alcohol. And a lot of these employees are in their 20s or low 30s, and I don't remember drinking as much as those guys do, but they go out every night and drink, and sometimes we've caught them and we've had to make examples, bringing it into work, not bringing their alcohol, drinking my alcohol at work, but drinking at work, and it's absolutely unacceptable. So that's a big, not even a rule, that's a law that we have there, and you know, and then there are the safety guidelines. You know, if there's a spill on the floor, they have to bring the yellow sign out, you know, the tent yellow sign, watch for the spill. They have to mop it immediately. So we have a lot of rules, you know, not a lot. We try to keep it pretty simple. There's like maybe 5 or 10 rules that if they see something like that it doesn't matter if it's a server that didn't spill it, and if they see the spill, they've got to go take care of it. So we do things like that, but I would say the necessity of alcohol is a no alcohol policy is one of the main things that we've found that we still have to monitor, and we've had a few employees that have broken it that don't work there anymore.
For us, you know, risk management, of course, was a part of our founding business plan. We really pride ourselves on staying above industry standard, you know, even safer than youth football, youth soccer. So when parents are calling concerned about, my kid's never been rock climbing, we could cite statistics saying, well, if you're not worried about your kid playing soccer or going outside to ride his bike, then you shouldn't be concerned about coming rock climbing with us. But the most interesting thing we've done recently was, you know, we ran this year, we had 107 15-passenger vans out on the road with, you know, up to 13 young kids in them any given day of the summer. Over the years, we've had an incredibly positive safety record while kids were in the van, but the after work times when staff were using the vans to go climb or were filling it up with gas, they would be off guard, out of their box, and bump into bollards at the gas station, stuff like that. So we've gotten to a point in our budgeting that last year we had budgeted about $30,000 purely that was going to go to our rental company for cosmetic damages to our 15-passenger vans that happened over the course of the summer. What we decided to do last year, just as a test, was to tell our seasonal staff, hey, we'd rather give that money to you than to give it to the insurance company. So we budgeted $30,000. Anything less than $30,000, we're going to divide up between all of you and give it back to the employees. So if you stay safe, then you win with a small financial bonus at the end. And remarkably, after many years of the trend going, it's like money talks, especially if you're a seasonal outdoor educator that's like piecing together ski work to summer work. So it was really cool. We had $16,000 that wasn't spent to fix, you know, small cosmetic blemishes, and we got to divide that up between all of our staff. That's awesome.
So our policies were written before I began at the company, but I get to be part of, with the safety committee, adding more policies and forms, and you get the eye rolls from people, and my dad works for me, and I have to go ask him to fill out a safety observation form. You know, I want you to once a week do a safety observation form, and he comes short of cussing me out in front of everybody. You know, the whole point of all those things and those forms and those policies are to try to get people to do hazard recognition ahead of time and think about it before an incident happens. Like I was telling you earlier, that you can change behavior for a while and people can act right for a couple days or a couple months or even a couple years, but you have to change their heart and what they believe in if it's gonna last, right? So not only do I go out and tell my dad to fill out this safety observation form, but I explain why it's important that you encourage it to others and make it important and make it so that you care too. So when you get the leaders, the safety leaders and the frontline supervisors to care about it, you can start to change everybody's heart a little bit.
Mm-hmm. It'd be terrible if you had to fire your dad.
Yes, it would be.
Like
Yes, it would be.
an awkward family dinner.
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
So you mentioned you added some new policies. Can you give us an example?
Policies is and when I say policies, it's more like alcohol awareness training for our frontline supervisors, being able to see and recognize people who may be under the influence, just because somebody lunchbox got kicked over and 2 shooters come out. You know, it doesn't mean that they were drinking on the job, but we need to be able to recognize those things and be proactive in them and learn how to handle those situations, because there's a lot of things that come up that folks don't know how to handle. So, and then just about once a month I have a new idea. So it becomes a new form, and I have to explain it. And I understand that we overload the people with that sometimes, but I think it helps. So.
And do you have regular safety meetings? How often, or just when you come up with your new idea?
Yeah. The workers all, you know, every day there's a safety meeting. There's a task hazard awareness meeting, and then weekly on the sites. But the company gets together, and we fluctuate in the field with 85 workers, 20 shop workers, 25 people in the office. But that can fluctuate up to 130. And every 3 months, the whole company gets together for 3 or 4 hours, and we do safety stuff. And that's not really done by a lot of other small subcontractors where you bring everybody together that often. So.
Any other comments?
Just we're pretty different. We don't believe as much in policies and forms. We think it really comes from the bottom up for, you know, risk awareness. You know, we intentionally teach the kids positive risk taking because we want them to stretch their comfort zones, and we want kids as young as 3 to be able to look out and be able to identify what the hazards are out there, whether it's wind, whether it's sun, and you know, we regularly, instead of having a lot of meetings, we create intentional moments throughout the day for our staff and our kids to engage together in, hey, our environment's changing, you know, what is potentially dangerous out there, what could happen, and it's pretty powerful for a 7-year-old kid to be able to tell the group and the staff what the rules are. Our staff, they're just kind of like doing course correction as needed and thinking of the big things to make sure kids stay safe, but we try to get all that stuff coming from the kids on up.
So I think, Kyle, it's kind of interesting because you work in an industry where safety is such a huge part of the service you provide, because you have to keep those kids safe.
Absolutely.
And so, you know, from that, you've got a culture of keeping your customer, your clients safe, but translating that back then into the employees is another element that other industries don't have.
Yeah, and the line we always say is, you know, to our staff is, you know, we want this to be the best job you ever have, but we also want you all skiing this winter. So we kind of keep that staff safety mantra top of mind along with the camper safety.
So you're also unique, I think, out of the 3 up here because you employ a lot of young workers. And what are some of the challenges you face with young workers?
Can I be a young worker?
You can be a young worker.
I don't want to sound like I'm. Sometimes when I have to ask that question myself. Well, I know the question. The question's always because, you know, it's the next generation and the generation before that, and it's a different workforce, and we have to bend and mold and really almost get counseling sometimes about how to handle these. They're not millennials now. It's what's the one before millennial? They're even younger now.
Z?
Generation Z, and it's a totally different work kind of ethic and force, because, you know, when I was growing up, it was all about, we worked a lot of hours and all this stuff, but a lot of these kids, you know, they want their free time, so they want, you know, a lot of time off, or they'll, you know, we have a policy that, you know, we need, you know, at least, you know, 2 or 3 weeks if you need like a week off or time off, and, you know, unless it's an emergency, and they'll say, hey, next week I'm going skiing for a week. It's like, well, okay, but the policy is this, so we have to kind of bend and mold and constantly remind them about, you know, that we can't run a free for all. We have to run the restaurant. And you know, we had one time where I think almost 3/4 of the, not 3/4, like half of the front of the house staff signed up to do the Tough Mudder. Have you heard of this Tough Mudder thing where you go? And it was extremely busy night. And so we were looking at the schedule a couple weeks before, and we were going over with the manager. We said, you can't run this. We can't open with half the staff on a night like this. And he's like, well, what do you want me to do? They're all going to the Tough Mudder. I said, well, they all can't go if they want to work here. We have to sit down and see who, you know. So it's those type of things that can get frustrating. So now we are constantly reminding them about scheduling, that, if Janet Jackson is playing across the street, not that everybody want to go to that anyway, but they all can't go to Janet Jackson. We have to have staff. We have to work it out. So it's a constant reminder to keep them, because if you don't say anything, you're going to wind up with the Tough Mudder problem all the time. So we're constantly doing that. We have it on the schedule fly. We have it everywhere now. It's posted everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, I would play kind of devil's advocate to that, and it's of course hard to talk to a room of researchers and say I don't buy into all the research, but I feel like millennials, Gen Z, baby boomers, people say kids these days, my kids need the same thing that I needed. Like we need the 4 basic needs: fun, freedom, power, and belonging, and that really hasn't changed from when we all were kids. So when people say, oh, millennials, the door just can't be open, you have to walk out the door and you have to go to them and the information has to be instantaneous. Like our staff, just like people my age, just like older, they want to be listened to, they want to feel respected, they want to be told the truth, they want to learn. Those things haven't changed. So I have a hard time justifying having to bend over backwards for the Tough Mudders, even though, of course, we have to deal with those problems when they arise, and maybe you and I would never have Tough Muddered our way out of a Friday night shift, but it's just I just feel like it's excuses, and if you could just treat people like people, then hopefully they'll respect you and respect your business enough to realize what it means if they don't show up to work.
Once these young people understand the value of a structure, they buy into it pretty quick. And if we pair them up with the right people and the right person's showing them what they can accomplish every day through this structure, they love it. So it's really not that much difference.
So transitioning from young workers, which I actually did not mean millennials or Gen Zers. We know young workers get injured more often, they have less experience, and then they're reluctant to speak up. So those are the things I think that may put them at risk, whether they're millennials or Gen Z. I think that's pretty constant. There is a lot of discussion about different generations and the impact there. But another group are those precarious workers. And these are the people who are in the non-standard employment. They are often thought to be poorly paid, insecure work, and unprotected. And do you have a story about your experience working with or employing precarious workers, and does that apply for your organization?
I think we have a lot of precarious workers. What'd you say, underpaid and overemployed? What was the definition?
Well, I have non-standard employment, so poorly paid, insecure, and unprotected.
What about overly secure? I mean, as I said before, do I have a story? Probably countless stories. Just recently, one of my wife's closest friends called and said her brother was moving out from Indiana to Boulder. Could we hire him? He loves kids. He likes to hike. And, so do the phone interview. Name was Tyler. Sounded like an incredible person. Obviously a great, credible source that his sister is a close friend. Hire Tyler. Finally meet him the first day of staff training. And he is like you look up in Google Images like big teddy bear. And you see Tyler, but I mean really big teddy bear. I mean, this is somebody who has a heart of gold, but truly has never been on a paddleboard, has never rock climbed. And the first day of training, we take him out, and this was really really sad at the moment, and our staff did an incredible job. But goes to put on a climbing harness, and we actually didn't even have the size that fit him. So talk about a precarious situation. All of a sudden you have this young, ambitious person that just moved across country, day one of a new job, and we don't even have the equipment in the size that could properly enable him to do his job safely. And how we deal with that, I sound like a broken record, but we deal with that with compassion and with empathy and with taking Tyler to REI after camp that day and buying him a harness for him to keep and going climbing with him at the gym until he was a confident belayer. And I think that, you do that and you change the trajectory of his relationship with the outdoors. And when other staff see what you're willing to do for one precarious worker, then word gets out that, hey, you don't have to be, an outdoor enthusiast to work with Avid for Adventure. As long as you love kids, there are people that can get you to where you need to be. So I think we specialize in precarious workers, and I welcome all of them to us.
We've had some experience with that too. I mean, it seems like when we have a family member or a relative or a good friend who's sending somebody to work for us or work with us because they want to help the person out, it usually doesn't work out very well for us because they're either not showing up for work or it's always been an issue for us. But we've had some precarious situations where we've had people, because in our business we're under the gun. When you're sitting down at 6 o'clock and you order your food, you don't want to wait 2 hours because the cook is either not showing up or he can't handle the spot that we've trained him to do, and we're constantly trying to work with the person. So we're on the spot a lot. Like the minute the doors open, you don't want to wait hours for you don't want to pay $32 for something that's not going to be edible. So we're usually pretty able to train even some of the slower cooks that come in and that are a little slower to learn, and we'll keep the support there. We'll keep the support there. But it gets to a point sometimes where we've done everything we can, and we can't, we can't double pay that position for months. So, and then we can't have guests, getting upset because they're not getting their food. So we have some precarious situations, but generally we're pretty good about knowing that earlier and putting them in a different position and seeing if they even want to work in the restaurant business, because some of them don't even want to do that. But hiring from friends and relatives, I think we've kind of gone away from that because it's always, like even my own kids, I'm like, I don't want you working for me. Go work somewhere else, and because the two of them did some part-time work while they're in college for me, and they did really good. The other one was terrible working for me because she would just follow me around all day and bother me. I'm like, hey, you got to work. You have a job. You can't just follow me around. So, I think it's better for your children to get to well, now I'm talking about children here, but it's an employee to go and work for somebody else and get that job themselves. You can maybe make a call, but it's better if they do it on their own. You can help them, talk to them about how they can do that, but they'll be a much better employee.
Mm-hmm. So the precarious worker in construction is we're talking about the person who's a contractor, so to speak, right? And the only way we're going to ever change that, because we know that that's a real danger in construction, is to change the laws. That's the only way we're going to change that.
Yeah. So audience, questions for our panel?
Thank you. This was marvelous. We've heard a lot at this meeting about employers who are not at all like you, who don't even think about occupational safety and health, the health of their workers, because they have so many other things on their minds. And so, particularly in startups, but in longer running companies too. So I'm sure you've observed these kinds of employers. What do you think is the difference? And what can we do if we're trying to make them be more aware of occupational safety and health?
And in my opinion, when I said it would get back to a question later, and you were talking, Kyle, about the vision and the mission, there may be an answer in there somewhere where if there was some organizing or liaisons to these small businesses that are going through a lot of change and aren't focused on safety and this and that, but if people were helping these small companies actually write visions and missions and values and incorporating safety so that you live and die by these values, that may do something. I don't know, it's just a thought.
Yeah, I was waiting for a silver bullet to come. It's almost like painful to listen to your question because everything I've ever known in my professional career has been about well-being, physical safety, positive mental health. So I can't even put myself in a situation where I work for an employer where that isn't valued. So, how do you bridge the disconnect between top employers and folks that, are more into profit than people? I think it all starts with us, just like our broken political system starts with us. If you want to affect change, you're likely not going to, get health care passed, but you can volunteer in your community and make a difference locally at your local shelter or food rescue or whatever you do. So I feel like the way to bridge the gap starts with the worker and starts with great companies that can train and educate as many people as possible so that if my 600 staff all next year spread out across the country and work for 600 different companies, they know what it's like to feel valued and feel safe at work, and they know that they'll work hard for a safe company, and they might be able to nudge that organization towards a policy that keeps their coworkers safe. So, I look at it upon myself as what can I do to affect change both within my company and who can I speak to? Maybe not at conferences like this where y'all are shaking your head like, oh yeah, I'm kind of preaching to the choir here, but how could I get into meetings of other companies and show them that, being a top place to work, drives our success? That not having to spend money to hire and recruit ends up really affecting the financial bottom line of the company. There's just so many merits to it, but I think oftentimes we're not speaking to that audience.
And to piggyback on that, a great argument is the financial argument. If they're a company that wants to be more profitable, if their product that they want to serve, if their vision of their product that they want to serve, if they want it to be beautiful and great, they have to have a happy, rested, within reason taken care of staff. You can't have people that are miserable at the job. Everybody knows people that, or maybe even ourselves, have had a job that was just miserable. But we don't feel like producing great things. We don't feel like working hard. So it's a financial thing. The company to be successful, most successful companies, I think, have the happiest, most rested, safest work staff.
I don't know if that works either. All right. For the two of you who have staff turnover sort of naturally, you've got a workforce that swaps out. How do you know that they're doing that in a positive way? As you said, a positive, I don't remember what you called it, but a positive move on. I coach a lot of companies, and I've worked with a number of companies who have high turnover. Some of them in industries similar to yours where there's a natural reason for it. And it's just sort of like, oh yeah, well that's just the way it happens. That's just, and I can see underneath that they've got a serious problem. How do you know beyond just that sense of yeah, this is good, that you are seeing a positive turnover? What are your indicators? How do you know that?
I think it's when people leave, it's how people are leaving. When we have staff members, and generally most of them leave to go to another state, they're moving for personal reasons, or they want to learn more and learn something different, and they come to me. So that they'll come to us and say, hey, I want to learn, I've learned your food, it's beautiful, it's great, I've learned the service here. I want to go learn more about wine, more about Italian wines and things like that. Okay, well, I'll call Bobby Stuckey from Frosca, see if I can get you, see if he has anything there or this or that. That when they're communicating that they want to leave your place and they know that they can come to you and it's a positive thing, then it's positive. It's negative if they've, broken the rules or whatever, or done something like that. But if you keep them, if they come to you and they want to move to learn something in my business, then that's the way I know.
We use data. I'm a big fan of metrics and numbers. So as I said, one of our bottom lines is staff happiness. So every week we're asking staff at every location in Colorado and California, on a scale of 1 to 10, how happy are you with working with Avid for Adventure? So we have the metric, and then the follow-up question is, and what could we do to get that up 1 point higher? So every week we are getting very real-time feedback, and we're able to assess trends just on a Google Sheet, from one location, what's happening throughout the summer, and we could start, mid-season burnout, week 6, shocker, that's happening again. Let's have a huge party to get them through week 6, and then that kind of ends in sight. But we can also compare Boulder, Colorado to Palo Alto and know that, wow, what's going on in Palo Alto that those staff don't seem as psyched on their employment with Avid as the ones in Boulder do. Let's learn from each other. So, that's kind of the real-time metric-based information that we use. And then, of course, just big fans of SurveyMonkey, and we're asking people, post-season, do you plan to come back? If yes, why? If no, why not? So we have all the reasons, going to graduate school, doing this, moving here where there's not a camp, etc. And then this time of year, when we're trying to get everybody to come back to work with us, we're asking, if they're saying no, we're also saying why. So we really have data over the years that shows that, people love working with us, and if their life still fits the seasonal lifestyle, then they're going to choose us for a seasonal company. If they're moving on to salaried work to graduate school, we want that for them because that's their life and they're on to great things. So.
Thank you.
Great. I have 2 comments and a question for you all. The first comment is thank you all for coming today because this is incredibly, it's great hearing kind of best-in-class description from your 3 industries. The second thing is, Tom, specifically to you, a bunch of us had a fantastic dinner with great service last night. So got my question. So Kyle, you touched on this. Do you all have experience sharing your best practices across your industry? I mean, where do you all get together and how do you share your best practices around health and safety? And how is that information really shared across the industry, if it is?
Well, I think if I met Kyle, I was out having a beer and I met Kyle and he told me the industry he was in and what he did. A lot of the times the discussion will come, how do your employees, there are those discussions. When you meet any business, what are your employees like? How do they like working for you? What do you do differently? And you'll get little nuggets of ideas that don't exactly fit your industry, but you can kind of mold it because it's a really great idea to fit your industry. So we are, whenever we're out and we're talking to people just casually, wherever it is, I'm always getting ideas for making our employees. It's not like we're like the Bozo of the Clown show all the time and making having a party for everybody all the time. But it's more than making them happy, making them feel like you were saying, making them feel a part. Like you guys were saying, making them feel part of what they're doing is important and what they're doing is good.
So within industry and within organization, we create internal webinars so that we can educate our distributed workforce across many of these topics that are relevant to young seasonal staff to keep them safe and keep them engaged. Externally, the American Camp Association is a large national organization, so I'll be out in California in 2 weeks for the Western Association of Camps to do trainings and to learn from the industry. The only other thing I'd say is I learn more from outside the camp industry. The camp industry as a whole is a very morally driven, feel good, sit around a circle in a campfire sort of group. But to learn best business practices, I like to go outside the industry to great organizations like Zingerman's in Ann Arbor, or reading about the Google benefits. And even though we're not a $1 trillion company, what can we do to help workers feel taken care of? So I think it's both within industry and then also outside our industry.
How are we doing on time? Can we take one more question? Do we have?
This guy used to work with Avid for Adventure, so I don't know if he's eligible to ask a question, because he's going to get really tough on me here.
I did go to the Avid for Adventure School of Management.
And look at him now. He owns a suit. It's amazing. Better than I could do.
You know, one of the things that strikes me is that all of your industries are evolving. So we haven't talked about what some of the things, what's on your horizon. So in the next 5 years, whether it's in terms of employee health or employee safety, or just challenges you think the business may face, what are some of those things that you're thinking about for the next 5 or 10 years? You just did your 5-year or your 10-year vision, right? And what are some of the challenges for all of your companies that you think may be out there for you?
The biggest challenge for us, Josh, is around safety in our transportation. We know what would happen if a driver got distracted and tragedy happened to a van full of kids. Everything we do is to prevent that from happening around, the quality of the vans that we lease and the training of our drivers. We have very ambitious growth plans. We hope to open a new state every other year starting next year and be a national company for youth adventure education, just like you think of Knowles or Outward Bound, you think of Avid 4. So we have a model that unfortunately is very sensitive to risk, specifically around vehicular risk. So we're mindful of that, and we're really just doing everything we can, both on the training side, on the hiring side, on the insurance side, to ensure that an incident that could happen with one of our staff or kids doesn't affect our ability to grow as an organization.
For us, we've grown so fast in the last 3 years that we've gotten a lot of good leadership that's risen to the top, and we want to perfect our skills. The next thing that I see happening at Horizon Glass is more of an employee-owned safety committee, where they have their own safety committee, and that goes along with the idea that they own it and it's theirs, and not so much transition safety over to them, but make them own it too. And so that's the next thing that we're working on.
Yeah, the restaurant industry, the hospitality, especially the restaurant industry, is constantly evolving. There's always a brand new restaurant right around the corner that's opening up. So we have a lot of competition. So the safety, the welfare of the employees, making sure that we are one of the places that people want to work, because we hear in the industry of places where people don't want to work. So fortunately, we've become one of the places that people want to work, because we're nice people to work for. We have rules and we have safe environment. We do have rules, but the people do want to work for us. So because we have that, we're able to continually look at the trends, kind of keep ourselves fresh. We don't want to change too much, but we want to be fresh, and and now we've been 6.5 years, so we're kind of becoming a staple. But we always have to look at what we're doing and making sure that we're not getting stagnant, and having a good workforce through safety and through incentives and through treating them well helps us do that.
So I think we'll end right here. I think that's a good note. I'd like to thank our panel, Josh, Kyle, and Tom. I appreciate your taking the time to share your stories with us. We're always interested in knowing what's going on in different areas and businesses, so you did a great job here. And so let's give them a round of applause.